Let's talk to really quick Joe, who I challenged to call in. You said in the chat saying that
Yeah.
evolution isn't real. Let's see if we can continue this. Joe, you also say that evolution is a fraud. You're on the line with Forrest and Justin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Nice to talk to you, Forrest. I've never had the pleasure before.
So
nice
you
to talk
just
to you
heard
again,
us
Justin.
talking to Kevin. You just heard us talking to Kevin about evolution. Hopefully now we're at least on the same page of what the definition of evolution is, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was very informative. I was glad to have gotten to be a fly on the wall there. So yeah,
Hell yeah.
you convinced me. I'm now an evolutionist. If that is the definition of the word evolution, then I'm an evolutionist, and I'm also
Sweet chicken.
a creationist at the exact same time.
I figured.
Okay. So that's theistic evolution, does that a lot. But like, what was like, if your hang up, it sounds like if just that definition was the issue, then your hang up might have been similar to Kevin's, where you're saying that it has to be this massive change in phenotype or something like that, which is implied but not necessary. Is that what we're getting from? Is there a part of evolution that still sticks in your craw?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm nothing of a biologist. I haven't done the even the research that Kevin has, and I'm sure that is pretty laughable.
I haven't done the research that Kevin hasn't. That's very funny.
But no, it's just more of a practical layman's perspective on things. I'm not interested so much in speciation because there really are. I think that word has changed over the century. It sounds like that word has changed.
We used to use the word races instead of species, and now it's become more and more refined over the past couple of centuries. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm more interested in, and this is totally the wrong word, but like individual technology within a creature. For instance, gills,
like adaptations,
blood clotting, eyeballs.
Yeah, totally.
All of that. I'm just looking at it from a layman, looking at how many well-trained biologists there are, all the data collection systems that we have. Have we seen a single example where a creature, a species, mutates a brand new positive technology like a gill, like a wing, like an additional helpful lung, something along those lines?
Sort of. So it's really important to remember that like there's this phrase that we use all the time, that evolution is not an inventor, it's a tinkerer. Right. So it takes what's already there and it just kind of twists it and it stretches it and changes it a little bit. And so like in terms of like an observation of like seeing a new structure, a new trait, a new character, a new adaptation coming into being, like maybe not exactly what you're asking for, but like major changes in traits and characteristics and things, yes. And also, as I was trying to get across to Kevin at the end there, like we also have like monumental amounts of evidence showing like how these things came up over time, even if we can't see it within one lifetime. I'd be happy to get into either of those if you'd like to specialize into one, or I can just start rambling about both. It's up to you. Or if you have a different question, I can talk about that instead.
Well, no, I guess my contention with evolution is like even that, the example, do you happen to know off the top of your head or Google easily how long the current definition of evolution has been used? Because I also was under the impression of what Kevin was thinking, that it had to do with larger changes, not just any change within a species. It was more significant change. I'm just wondering how long that definition has been that definition.
I don't know off the top of my head, but usually when people like Kevin or any creationist wants to say that like, you know, XYZ big change is possible, they'll split hairs between what's called microevolution and macroevolution. So just to give you as much ammunition as you might need here, microevolution is defined as small genotypic changes within a population that sometimes cause like little differences in the population, differences in hair color, differences in like leg length, wing shape, whatever, clutch size of, whatever, all these different things. Whereas macroevolution is the term for the big body changes that we see throughout the fossil record, where we definitely see like, okay, there were these kinds of animals, and now there are these kinds of animals, and those other ones are gone, and like where you see like totally new structures evolving, like talk about dinosaurs. Here are all these theropods. These are absolutely fucking lizards, and now they have feathers, and now they're birds. Those kinds of things are described by macroevolution, and a lot of creationists will concede to microevolution because it's literally undeniable. We can see it with our own eyes, but then say that macroevolution is faith-based, or is something that we can't actually build evidence for because we can't watch that happen. We can't watch feathers evolve. But we do see a change in the fossil record where we see there weren't feathers and then there were feathers. And so that's kind of what people tend to lean on. It sounds like that might be where your hang up is too, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I think that is where my hang up is the kind of the combining of the idea of irreducible complexity that I'm sure you guys are way more familiar with than I am, but the combination of that and our ability to have seen something like one of these irreducibly complex mechanisms. I'm talking, something simple, blood clotting.
Yeah.
Maybe an eye is not so simple, but something that comes along that would be like a completely brand new innovation, like we see in I don't know how many tens of millions of different unique technologies there are in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
But I would think as long as
So
we've been looking at them and people have been studying them, we would have seen at least a handful of brand new innovations pop up in the time that we've been looking at them.
the issue is that so you used a really important word here. You were talking about irreducible complexity, and the specific example of blood clotting as well tells me a lot about where this information is coming from for you. There is a notorious biochemist by the name of Michael Behe, who wrote a book called Darwin's Black Box a little while ago. And Michael Behe is a creationist. He works for the Discovery Institute, which, if you don't know, is a pseudoscience organization that has a stated purpose of trying to debunk evolution and spread theocracy. That is their goal, is to turn America into a creationist Christian nation, where their beliefs penetrate every level of our society and legal and law and everything like that. So that's where this guy's coming from, and he wrote this book called Darwin's Black Box, where he's talking about irreducible complexity. He coined these terms, and what he means by that, as I'm sure you know, is that there's this structure, this thing, this organ, this process, whatever, that is very complex, and if you remove one single piece of it, the whole thing falls apart and it doesn't work anymore. And he very commonly will liken that to a mousetrap and say, if you remove the board, the spring, the trigger, the bar, any single part of this mousetrap is gone, the whole mousetrap fails. And therefore, every single part of blood clotting is important. Every single part of the eye is important. The bombardier beetle, he has all these examples. And this is so notoriously, so frequently debunked. He was a big part of the Kitzmiller v. Dover trial, which was a landmark case in which I believe it was the Discovery Institute actually that were part of that trial. I think it was them as a group. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it was about whether or not intelligent design can be taught in schools. And the main argument was, is intelligent design just creationism in a lab coat? Which it fucking is, by the way. And the National Center for Science Education, led by Eugene E. Scott, blew that case out of the water by demonstrating that they literally took their own materials about creationism and just control-find the word creationism and changed it out for the word intelligent design, so much so that there was one point in there where they fucked it up, and it was like, this is clearly an example of credesignism. It's like they just blew it, you know what I mean? And so anyway, that's this beside the point. During this trial, Michael Behe gets up on stand and is asked by this lawyer, hey, do you understand, you're seriously telling me that pick your favorite blood clotting or whatever is something that can't evolve, and there's nothing to prove that evolved? And he's like, yes, there's no literature, there's no evidence at all that this evolved. And famously, the lawyer goes back to the podium and grabs a stack of textbooks that describe this and puts it in front of him, and then walks back and grabs a stack of scientific papers that describe this and puts it in front of him, and does this over and over until in the court documents it says you couldn't see Michael Behe behind this stack of fucking evidence of all these other scientists that are studying this and gathering evidence for how this stuff evolved. And so they lost this fucking case, and it was demonstrated that what they're proposing with irreducible complexity, with intelligent design, with all this stuff, it is just religion. It is their lack of imagination. They see something that looks really complicated. They don't know how it evolved. They don't do any research, and they just say this is complicated. God done it, and that's the whole argument. I'm going to give you one more thing. I've been talking for a long time. I'm going to give you one more thing.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. I've been talking for a long time, but once you're done, I'm going to tell you how eyes evolved, and that's going to help to elucidate what I'm talking about here.
Okay. Yeah. So I have never read anything from Michael Behe. I've heard his name before, and I've heard the name of the Star in the Black Box, but I'm not.
Save yourself the trouble.
I'm not familiar with the work. But yeah, so I'm surprised. Like, I'm clearly, like, maybe not even have achieved the rank of layman at this point in terms of my understanding of these things. But like, doesn't it seem it seems odd to me that I asked what I thought was a fairly simple question, and you began to just attack the person of Michael Behe. Like, I don't know. I've never met Michael Behe. I'm certainly not him. Why can't you just give me an answer about examples that we have of brand new technology coming from a place where that technology was not before? Like, that's my understanding of the macro evolution. And we've got, like I said, at least tens of millions of different unique technologies that are here on our planet right now that we're looking at. It would be a tremendous shot in the arm against all of us fanatic 6-day creationists if you could point out a brand new organ or system that came into being by evolution.
Yeah, totally. So just to be clear, I wasn't trying to give an ad hominem attack to Michael Behe here. I just the guy is taken so not seriously by people who know how this shit works, and the specific words you use. The reason why I pointed it out is because I realize you haven't read Michael Behe's stuff. That's great. His concept of irreducible complexity, and specifically his argument about blood clotting and things like that, are so unbelievably popular and common among creationists that they get shared around. It's like, you know, I used to have people tell me that evolution was a farce, and I'm like, where the fuck is everybody using that weird ass word? It's because the Hank Hanegraaff, the Bible answer man, called it a farce and published a book about it, and everybody's grandma bought that book and then taught their children the word farce with it. And so it's like, it's just a pattern of where we see misinformation coming from. So, like, yeah, it's not an ad hominem attack. I'm just trying to show that, like, this is not a new concept for us, and it's something that's already been dealt with handily. Now, in terms of your requests, I just threw a marker. In terms of your requests about, can I show a new system, a new technology, whatever coming up? Absolutely. We can show this happening in the fossil record, and we can show contemporary examples. So think about eyeballs, right? This is what I was going to get with you a minute ago. What does an eye do? Okay. Right? It's a text light. And so Darwin actually wrote in on The Origin of Species. He said to assume that the eye could have evolved by natural processes seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest possible degree. And then the next thing he says, in the very next sentence, he says, and yet reason tells me that if I can see numerous gradations from a very simple to a very complex eye among animals out in the world, which I can, and if each of these different gradations does bear utility to its possessor, which is certainly the case, and if these gradations can change over time, being passed down from parent to offspring, which we also can see is the case, then the idea that an eye, a complex eye, could have evolved by natural processes. He says that any objection to that cannot be considered serious. Basically, he says, I can't take, I forgot his exact word, but he says, I can't take you seriously if you object to this concept, considering the evidence that he had 200 years ago. And now, based on that framework, we can actually now go out and look at the animal kingdom and see some stuff. So here I've got my whiteboard here. most simple eyes out there, right? All an eye is doing is detecting light. Light's there all the time, right? It is a resource that we can be utilizing. So we have here a simple patch of photosensitive cells, right? We have some cells that are just in or able to detect where light is and isn't. This is the simplest kind of eye. We call it an eye spot. And we see that on things like euglena and other single-celled organisms, especially, where they can detect the difference between light and shadow. And they use that whenever there's a shadow coming in, they swim away from whatever predator might be casting that shadow. So these are things without brains that are behaving in ways that help their survival and reproduction. And they're doing it with an eye that is the most simple kind of eye there can possibly be. Then you take this simple little eye and you just put a dent in it. Put a dent like that. You now have a cup eye, right? And now you have something really cool where you can see the direction in which light is coming from. You're not just seeing whether light is there or not. You can now tell which side of the cup that light is hitting. And that gives you a lot more information. And we see that in planarian worms and things like that. Cup eyes are definitely a thing we see in the animal kingdom. You keep making that bowl deeper and deeper, and pretty soon you get to a pinhole camera eye, where you have this great big deep bowl and a small little opening in the front. Now you have really high resolution, right? And you can actually test this if you wear glasses or contacts or anything like that, any kind of corrective lens, take it off so your vision's all fuzzy, and then make the tiniest possible hole with your fingers or poke a pinhole in a piece of paper and look through it. The smaller that hole is, the higher resolution image you will get, even without any kind of corrective lens. It's really, really cool. And we see this kind of eye on like nautiloids and things, right? So this is another one. We see it in the animal kingdom. Then all you need to do is take that pinhole camera and slap a little lens on there. And you can make lenses out of the same kind of material that you have laying around everywhere else. Now you have a focusing lens. And if you want to get to a really complex mammalian eye, you just put some little muscles on the side, ciliary muscles, that can squeeze and stretch that lens to help focus the distance that you're seeing. And now you have a mammalian eye just like ours. And we indeed see those examples out in the animal kingdom as well. And so following Darwin's example, and just looking out in the animal kingdom, we can see a gradation from the most simple possible eyes all the way up to really complex advanced eyes like ours. Each one of them serves a purpose. Each one of them is beneficial to the possessor. Each one of them can change slightly, and those changes are heritable. And so just like Darwin said, the difficulty in believing that a simple eye could become a more complex eye over the course of however long can hardly be considered real. And what's most compelling is that isn't just a conjecture either. If we go to, I believe it was Utah, I think it was University of Utah. Yes. We have here from learn.genetics.utah.edu a page about eye evolution. This is from the University of Utah, where this group actually went through, and what they tried to do was start with a patch of flat light sensitive cells, just flat patch of light sensitive cells, just like I talk about, all the way over to a complex image forming eye with a constricting lens and all that stuff. And they actually broke these things down into specific improvements. And they came up with 1,800 specific tiny improvements, from the very simple flat patch of cells all the way up to the complex mammalian focusing image forming eye. And based on their work as genetic researchers, they concluded that those 1,800 steps could have taken place in 360,000 generations, which would have taken just a few 100,000 years. Considering the fact that eyes first appear in the fossil record 550 million years ago, that means that eyes could have evolved this way from scratch more than 1,500 times over and over and over and over and over again. So there's some actual data, some actual statistical and genetics data to back up that this is not just crazy conjecture. This is proof that it's possible. And when we look out in nature, we see all these different stages that actually make sense and follow the form of natural selection that we understand. Does that make sense, Joe?
Yeah, it does. Thank you for laying that out for me. Do you have? I may have missed it if you gave the resource where I could go and look at. You said like 1,800 steps.
Yeah, I can put that in the chat right now. Here's this. This is just kind of an
Okay.
informational page, and I think they do link the actual work on this page somewhere.
Okay, that'd be cool. I'm sure
That's
I
in the
would
chat
learn
now.
a lot by reading some of that. I can't see the chat
It's
because
pretty
I'm
cool
on
stuff.
my phone only, but
Oh yeah, you can look
okay.
up it's learn.genetics.utah.edu. So if you just go on Google and just type in University of Utah or utah.edu genetics evolution, you'll probably find it.
Okay. Cool. As I'm sorry, what's your major in?
I'm a biologist. That's the easiest way to say it. If you want, I
Okay.
can actually break down
Okay.
where I come from, but it would take a minute and it might not be useful.
No, it would go right over my head anyway. But I'm trying to think, does biology cross over into chemistry at all?
A lot. Yeah.
Okay.
It's often said that biology is just chemistry in motion.
Okay. Well, maybe you can satisfy my curiosity on this one as well, which is I'm starting to see just little bits and pieces of findings of proteins in fossils that are supposedly hundreds of millions of years old. And I have been led to believe that proteins, under the most best circumstances, cannot last even a million years. Is that too new for there to be a model for how that could work, or have models come out for how we could be finding proteins in old fossils?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So number one, this is not just proteins, like because well, okay. So let me say this. The big landmark in this was a scientist by the name of Mary Schweitzer, and she was studying tyrannosaur fossils. And she took this one fossil, cut really thin slices out of it, and then dissolved those slices in acid. And she found soft tissue that was still in there, little scraps of blood vessel, little bits of protein, just this tiny little stretchy bit of material, right? Creationists like to run away with this and say, like, clearly these aren't millions of years old, right? Two things. Number one is that was the first time we'd seen shit like that. And since then, we've actually found a few situations where that's possible. And yes, we are developing models to explain how it works. The same way, like when we talk about fossilization in general, the material in which something fossilizes, the chemical composition of the soil, determines the quality of the fossil. Similarly, it can also determine like whether or not this type of shit is possible. It's a little bit outside of my field, and I don't want to give you too much jargon. But yes, to answer your question, yes, we are coming to terms with that. What I think is more important for you specifically to know is that Mary Schweitzer is a devout Christian. She actually got into science as a young Earth creationist who attended a lecture about evolutionary biology and decided she was going to become a biologist to prove all this shit wrong. And she talks about how she had an amazing professor who encouraged her to do everything in her power to prove evolution wrong. And that she studied hard every day. And the more she learned, the more she realized, and this is a common deconstruction story we get here all the time, the more she looked for evidence against evolution, the more she found evidence for it. And the more she tried to debunk the evidence for evolution, the more she couldn't escape it. And eventually, she then became a paleontologist, and she's the one who discovers this amazing thing that we can sometimes find tissue and material that we didn't think could last this long, that is perfectly preserved. Well, I shouldn't say perfectly preserved, but it is preserved in this fossil. After permineralization takes place, there's just this perfect anoxic environment where these things don't break down the way that we expect them to. She is still very Christian. And she has publicly stated several times that her biggest pet peeve, the thing she hates the fucking most, is when young Earth creationists will take her work and try to use it to prop up the idea of young Earth creationism, try to prop up the idea that evolution isn't true, try to argue against science, and try to make people believe that science and God are incompatible. So the person who made the discovery you're talking about,
I can't be accused of that.
yeah, no, but that's well, the reason why I'm bringing that up to you is because what you're presenting to me here, like I said, it's like with the Michael Behe thing. Like these are really, really, really common counter arguments and really common misunderstandings. They're common because they're so convincing, right? But at the end of the day, even the scientist who made the discovery you're talking about is a little bit on your team. Like she's a very devout Christian, but she doesn't believe in young earth creationism anymore. She doesn't believe in the Bible in that way anymore. She still believes in Jesus, still believes in God, believes that the science she discovers speaks to the glory of the God she believes in. And I think that's okay. That's I've worked with people like that before. I worked for a physicist who was a Catholic. My first master's was in bioanthropology. I worked with someone who was studying human evolution alongside me, who was a devout Christian. And so, like, it's just really important to remember that, like, I don't want you to walk away from this thinking that these have to be mutually exclusive ideas. I hope you call me back sometime. We have to move on to the next call. We're running out of time, but like, I hope you call me back sometime and let's talk about young earth creationism. Let's talk about 6-day creation. Because I think that there are some holes there that I can maybe help talk about. But just at the end of this conversation, I want you to know, like, macroevolution, long-term evolution, changes in phenotype, development of new technology, like you were saying. I love that term. Development of new adaptations. These are all things that we have massive amounts of evidence for. It's not just a guess. It's not just a faith-based claim. And we can see models that actually make it work. And there are plenty of people who believe with you in gods and Christianity and all these things that still understand how evolution works. Is that okay for you right now?
Yeah, that's good. It is funny to me that I've heard this before. I think very well that Christianity and evolution are completely incompatible, and I think it's really funny when you guys. It's kind of cute actually when you guys try and convince me that I can still believe what I want to about God, but I should get off this young Earth thing because that's the worst.
Not what you want to. You can't believe what you want to, but you can still believe in a God. Just not what you want to believe in about God. Because yes, evolution is completely incompatible with the Bible, but it's not incompatible with Christianity.
Oh, it certainly is incompatible with Christianity. Yeah, the entire premise of why I need a savior depends upon how the reality of how sin and death came into the world. If sin and death were just a part of the original plan of God that he baked into the system, then it would be completely ridiculous for me to think that him sending another human to live perfectly and die, that would it die in my place, that would somehow overturn death. That would be completely ludicrous. But the Bible teaches very clearly that sin and death came into the world as a result of man's free choice, that God created everything perfect. There was no constant, slow dying and being reborn and evolution and then dying and being reborn. And then finally we get to an Adam. The Bible is very clear that death began when Adam and Eve sinned. That was the first. And everything in the New Testament is built upon that concept. So Christianity and a long age of the earth are 100% incompatible. If I were to accept evolution in any sort, I would most definitely have to just reject Christianity wholesale.
So the issue is there's a guy named S. Joshua Swamidas. He's a MD and PhD. I made a video about him a little while ago, who is a creationist. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I don't want to misrepresent him. He's just the first one that came to mind. So I'm not calling him out here. But there are plenty of religious people of all stripes. I'm pretty sure this is his argument too. He wrote a whole book about it, about how, like, evolution is real, and then the first humans came along and they were a special creation that's distinct from everything else. So there's all this evolution, including evolution up to humans, but then when we get to actually the first Homo sapiens, that's where God intervened and then gave us a soul and some other stuff. And that's like the major. I'm pretty sure that's his argument. It's been a long time since I thought about it, but I know for sure I have heard that from other folks before. So, like, no, I'm sorry. There are people who square that circle. It doesn't work with your version of Christianity, and I understand that. There are over 40,000 different versions of Christianity, and so different denominations. Well, and so it may not work with yours, and that's why I'm saying it.
Justin knows the fallacies of that. I've heard him talk about how ridiculous that is, and where did the first did this creature that was sort of human, did they have a soul? Blah blah blah. There's a huge can of worms you open.
No, you know, I'm not saying it's a good argument at all. I'm saying that there are Christians who believe that way and can absolutely square that circle. And the only argument that you would have against it as a Christian is that they're the wrong kind of Christian.
Yeah, so
Right.
I agree. I think it
would-
depends on how you're interpreting the text. And Joe, you and I do know each other. So
Yeah.
you can check out like the BioLogos Foundation, and they do. I don't know. I want to say they do a pretty honest job of trying to integrate their faith with the facts of evolution. Personally, you already know my opinion. I think it fails, and one of the main reasons why it fails is for what you pointed out, which is that it seems like God would have made a very arbitrary distinction between here. This is like pre-human, and this is human. Like, where did he draw that line? But there are people at BioLogos. One of them was a professor of mine who is okay with that. He's okay with that gray area existing. But to be fair to your position, I mean, I agree with you. I think if evolution is true, I think there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that no longer makes sense. And I would prefer somebody to look at the facts of evolution and come to the conclusion that the Bible's kind of silly if evolution is in fact true, and maybe move into something that makes more sense with the evidence we have available to us. If it's not Christianity, it could be some other form of theism. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be an atheist to accept evolution.
Right. Yeah.
Just ask the Catholics.
Yes, I was just pulling that up. So I've got if you look at the Didache Study Bible,
it's down the BioLogos Foundation.
Yeah, in the Didache Study Bible, it's specifically a Catholic study Bible that gives you the teachings from the Catechism and the Magisterium. They actually do have a pretty good article on how they square evolution with the Bible. Again, I personally wouldn't find it convincing, but I know a lot do. And it all comes down to how flexible is your hermeneutic. If you don't have a flexible hermeneutic, then incorporating evolution into your worldview is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I would just probably use the same hermeneutic that Jesus used when he walked the earth, and that would shut it down pretty quickly.
Right, because Jesus quoted Genesis, that God created them male and female, right? Matthew 19, he quotes Genesis.
Right. Yeah, and he treats it as a historical fact that they should base their lives upon, the creation of the universe. But
right,
Forrest, you've been very generous with me in giving, I'm sure, incredibly dumbed down explanations of some of the things that I asked about. I appreciate that.
You ask
that is a gift.
I can't stress enough how common your concerns are. I just want you to walk away from this knowing that, like, these are things that, like, everybody who has questions about evolution, that, like, the only one you missed is, why are there still monkeys if we came from monkeys? Like that, it's very, very common. So these are things that I'm used to talking about. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity for me to dig into them, and I really do hope you call me back so we can talk about it more.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, Joe, it's good to hear from you again. We've spoken before. It sounds like you're trying to dig in and find answers. So I encourage you to continue doing that. I think it's a noble cause to question your belief system, which is what you're doing right now. You're questioning what you believe, try to find answers to everything. So good on you for doing that.
Most definitely.
Alrighty. Well, y'all have a good night.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Cheers.
Hey, if you liked this video, why don't you click that like button?
And if you didn't
That's
like
where
it,
you would say,
subscribe.
Okay.
You didn't give me a chance.
There was such a long pause.
What are you on speed or something? I barely had a chance.
Let's try again. Hey, I hope you liked. Hey there. I hope you liked that clip. Hey, I hope you liked that clipper just now, the one that you just watched with your eyes. If you did like it, why don't you click that like button?
And if you didn't like it, tell Jimmy to go fuck himself.
Hey, I hope you liked that clip right now. If you did like it, why don't you hit that like button?
And if you didn't like it, go ahead and subscribe anyway.